Hi everyone, I'm back with step 5 of the collaborative model, generating options. And again, we're working with Ted, Stella, and that noisy dog Jasper from step 4. To recap briefly from step 4, that was about figuring out what Ted wanted and what Stella wanted and what they wanted to avoid in a good solution as they moved forward. Now Ted, he was working shift work, wanted rest, exercise, good health. Stella, she wanted companionship, not from Ted, from Jasper the dog. She wanted to be good neighbors with Ted, and they both wanted healthy dogs, happy dogs. Very compatible. What they wanted to avoid was also kind of similar. Ted wanted to avoid Jasper being locked up and not getting any exercise all day. And for Stella, losing Jasper would have been awful. You'll recall from the overview of the model that the logic is that once you know what you want and what you want to avoid, then you can build options that will help you to get that. And remember that they started with the options under the dog bylaw: silence the dog or get rid of it. The first thing to do, whether you're working from a sheet of paper or whether you're working from a flip chart sheet like this, is to give yourself some space for later evaluating the ideas. So the first thing we're going to do is draw a line a little bit in from the left edge. When we get to evaluating the options, you'll see why that's important and exactly how it works. The second thing you need to do is to pay attention to this principle of brainstorming or generating options. Early evaluation kills creativity. Example, so if Ted says to Stella, you know what, Stella, why don't you just change your hours of work and go into work an hour later? By then I'll be asleep. And Stella says to Ted, oh, I can't do that. That's a stupid idea. How many more ideas do you think Ted is going to kick out to Stella? 0, because that early evaluation shut down his creativity. So how do you do brainstorming and respect this principle? You do it by having an agreement at the outset. The agreement is we're not going to explain our ideas, we're not going to ask questions, we're not going to justify, we're not going to defend, we're just going to throw out everything that we could possibly think of as ideas, and then we'll come back and we'll evaluate them at step 6 when we go to select solutions. Why? Because the early evaluation kills creativity, so that's number 1. And number 2, you're going to get to do the evaluation at step 6, so there's no need to evaluate them now. As you'll recall from the overview clip, part of the logic of the collaborative model is that brainstorming is a matter of asking this question and then answering it with the options generated. So, how can we address the issue that we described in step 3 in a way that gets us what we said we wanted and wanted to avoid in step 4? If Ted and Stella were to have asked themselves that question, and they did, what did they come up with? They come up with several ideas. Stella could change her work hours. Ted could go to the gym before he went to sleep. Stella could walk Jasper early, perhaps tire him out a bit. Ted could use earplugs to cancel the noise. Stella could drop Jasper off at a neighbor's, and the neighbor could put Jasper in the kennel after 9. By then, Ted would be asleep, the children would be gone to school. So now I've captured those options on a flip chart, just like they could on a sheet of paper if it was just the two of them sitting down to have that conversation. Looks like they're making decent progress, doesn't it? They started out with those couple of options under the dog bylaw. Well, even before that, they started with Ted being so ticked off that he called the city and wanted something done about Jasper under the dog bylaw. Then they set the parameters for the conversation, they exchanged their perspectives, they described the issue neutrally, broadly, non-judgmentally. Then they figured out what they wanted and what they wanted to avoid. They recognized that there's a lot of compatibility in what each of them wanted. And from that, then they generated options that would get them what they want and help them to avoid what they wanted to avoid in order to address the issue that they described in step 3. So why does that happen? What happens is at step 4, when people start to see that what they want is compatible with what the other person wants, when they start to see that what they want to avoid is compatible with what the other person wants to avoid, I can say as a mediator that it's like a warm light going on in the room. And I know that sounds fluffy. And I guess you have to actually be there to see that. When people have collaborative conversations, that same growth of warmth happens. The other thing that I want to point out is that there's another piece of logic hidden in this collaborative model. And they're going to hit it at step 6, actually. So one of the tests in generating options is this. Is there an option for every interest, everything that you wanted or wanted to avoid? So is there an option over here for everything you have over there? Kind of looks pretty good at this point though, doesn't it? So there you have it. Ted and Stella have made it through step 5, generating options. And now they're ready to select solutions. Stay tuned for the next clip and you'll see how they ultimately resolved this issue.